Ladies and gentlemen, imagine this: someone has just said something hurtful, rude, or dismissive. Your heart races, your fists clench, and every fiber of your being screams for you to defend yourself, to fire back, to make them feel what you're feeling. But what if, in that moment, you chose quiet instead? Silence is often misunderstood. People think it's weakness, a sign that you're accepting what's been said or done. But let me tell you something: silence, when chosen intentionally, is one of the strongest moves you can make. It's not about avoiding conflict, it's about reclaiming your control over the situation and yourself. In a world that often equates speaking up with power, silence is misunderstood. It's seen as retreating, as giving up, or as an absence of courage. But true silence, the kind that is chosen with intention, can be one of the most powerful acts we engage in. It's not a sign of weakness, but a profound demonstration of strength. Choosing silence in the face of disrespect isn't about submission, it's about reclaiming control over yourself, your emotions, and the situation at hand. To understand the power of silence, we must first recognize the pressure we face to respond immediately when disrespected. Society teaches us that quick, sharp comebacks are a sign of intelligence and strength. We're told that speaking out, even in anger, is the way to show people that we won't tolerate being treated poorly. And while there are moments where speaking up is necessary and justified, not every situation calls for it. Often, the demand to react is fueled by our ego, by the idea that we must defend ourselves to prove our worth. Silence, on the other hand, challenges this narrative. It says, I don't need to prove anything to you or anyone else. My value is not up for debate. Silence, when chosen intentionally, creates a pause in the interaction, a moment to breathe, reflect, and evaluate. This pause is where strength resides. It takes immense self-control to resist the urge to retaliate when you've been disrespected. The natural human reaction to hurt is to hurt back. But in doing so, we often give away our power. Reacting in anger or frustration allows the other person to dictate our behavior, turning the interaction into a game of who can hurt the other more. Silence, by contrast, disrupts this dynamic. It breaks the cycle of reaction and counter-reaction, leaving the other person with no fuel to escalate the situation further. The power of silence lies in its ability to maintain your composure. It signals that you are not easily rattled, that your sense of self is not tied to the opinions or actions of others. When someone disrespects you, they are often seeking a reaction. Disrespect is a way of asserting control, of testing boundaries, or of projecting their own frustrations onto you. By staying silent, you deny them the satisfaction of knowing they've affected you. This is not about suppressing your feelings or pretending the disrespect doesn't hurt. It's about channeling your emotions in a way that protects your peace and dignity. Silence also gives you the upper hand in terms of perspective. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to misinterpret words, to react to something based on how it feels rather than what it truly means. By staying quiet, you create space to observe the situation more clearly. You can assess whether the disrespect was intentional or a misunderstanding, whether it deserves a response or simply a dismissal. This clarity allows you to act, if and when you choose to, from a place of purpose rather than impulse. Some might argue that silence allows disrespect to continue unchecked, that it gives the other person permission to treat you poorly. But silence isn't about ignoring the problem, it's about addressing it in a way that aligns with your values and goals. It's a refusal to engage on their terms. In some cases, silence speaks louder than words. It sends a clear message: I will not lower myself to your level. I value my energy and integrity too much to waste them here. Silence also forces the other person to confront their own behavior. When someone disrespects you and you don't respond, they're left with nothing but their own actions to reflect on. Your lack of reaction can make them question the appropriateness of their words or actions. It shifts the responsibility for the interaction back onto them where it belongs. They can no longer justify their behavior as a response to yours because you haven't given them anything to respond to. In many ways, silence is an act of self-respect. It's a way of saying, I value myself enough to not engage in this negativity. It protects your mental and emotional well-being, allowing you to conserve your energy for things that truly matter. Reacting to every instance of disrespect can be exhausting, leaving you drained and distracted from your goals. Silence, on the other hand, preserves your focus and your peace of mind. It allows you to choose your battles wisely, engaging only when it serves a greater purpose. Silence can also be an act of defiance. It's a way of standing firm in your truth without needing to explain or defend yourself. When you stay quiet after being disrespected, you are refusing to let someone else dictate your narrative. You are refusing to let their words or actions define you. This kind of silence is not passive, it's deliberate and powerful. It's a way of holding your ground without being pulled into a confrontation that ultimately serves no one. It's important to note that silence doesn't mean ignoring the impact of disrespect. It's not about pretending it didn't happen or bottling up your feelings. Instead, it's about processing those feelings on your own terms, away from the heat of the moment. Silence gives you the opportunity to reflect, to decide what you need in order to heal or move forward. It's a way of prioritizing your own well-being over the need to be understood or validated by the person who disrespected you. Silence, then, is not an absence of action. It is a deliberate choice, a powerful stance that communicates strength, self-respect, and emotional intelligence. It is a way of reclaiming control in situations where others may try to undermine you. And it is a reminder that your value is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to respond. When someone disrespects us, the immediate impulse is often to react. A cutting remark may inspire us to lash out in anger, defend ourselves, or even retaliate. This response feels instinctive, a way of protecting our dignity and asserting ourselves in the face of perceived harm. However, what we often overlook in these moments is the incredible power of the pause, the ability to delay our reaction, even if just for a few seconds, to create space for reflection. The pause is not a sign of hesitation or indecision. It is an intentional act of control that allows us to respond rather than react. Reactions are automatic. They are fueled by the intensity of the moment, by our emotions and instincts taking over. When we feel disrespected, we may experience a surge of anger, hurt, or frustration, and that emotional wave can push us to speak or act in ways we later regret. A pause interrupts this cycle. It gives us the time to take a breath, assess what we are feeling, and decide how or if we want to respond. In this way, the pause is a powerful tool for reclaiming our agency. Pausing before reacting begins with self-awareness. It requires us to recognize the emotions that arise when we are disrespected. This is no small task. Emotions like anger and hurt can be overwhelming, clouding our judgment and demanding immediate action. But by cultivating the habit of noticing these emotions as they surface, we can start to separate the feeling from the impulse to act on it. Instead of letting our emotions dictate our response, we can observe them with curiosity and compassion. Taking a pause doesn't mean suppressing our emotions or pretending we're not affected. On the contrary, the pause creates space to acknowledge what we're feeling without being controlled by it. For example, when someone says something disrespectful, we might feel a surge of anger. Instead of immediately snapping back, the pause allows us to internally name what's happening. I'm angry. Because that comment was hurtful, naming the emotion helps to diffuse its intensity, giving us a clearer head to decide what comes next. The pause is also an opportunity to consider the context of the situation. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to interpret disrespect as a personal attack, but not all acts of disrespect are intentional. Sometimes people say or do hurtful things out of ignorance, stress, or their own unresolved issues. By pausing, we can take a moment to ask ourselves, was this meant to be hurtful, or could there be another explanation? This doesn't excuse disrespectful behavior, but it does allow us to respond in a way that's informed by understanding rather than assumption. Another benefit of pausing is that it helps us align our response with our values. In the rush to react, we may say or do things that don't reflect the person we want to be. A sarcastic comment, a raised voice, or a defensive outburst might feel satisfying in the moment, but these reactions can leave us feeling ashamed or regretful later. The pause allows us to ask ourselves, what kind of response will I feel proud of later? How can I handle this in a way that reflects my character and integrity? The pause also serves as a reminder that not every situation requires a response. In our culture of quick comebacks and instant replies, silence can feel like defeat. But there is immense power in choosing not to engage with disrespect. Sometimes the most effective way to maintain your dignity is to walk away, to let the other person's words or actions fall flat without giving them the satisfaction of a reaction. The pause gives us the clarity to recognize these moments and make that choice. Physiologically, the pause has benefits as well. When we feel disrespected, our bodies often enter a state of fight or flight. Our heart rate increases, our breathing becomes shallow, and our muscles tense up. These physical reactions can intensify our emotions, making it harder to think clearly. Taking a few deep breaths during the pause can help to calm our nervous system, reducing the intensity of our emotional response, and allowing us to approach the situation with a clearer mind. Pausing before reacting also opens the door to empathy. When someone disrespects us, our first instinct is often to see them as an adversary. We focus on the offense and overlook the humanity of the person behind it. But the pause creates a moment to consider what might be driving their behavior. Are they lashing out because they're hurt or stressed? Are they projecting their own insecurities onto us? While this doesn't justify their actions, it can help us respond in a way that de-escalates the situation rather than fueling it further. One of the most profound aspects of the pause is the way it shifts the power dynamic in an interaction. When someone disrespects us, they are often trying to provoke a reaction. By pausing, we take back control of the interaction. We show that we are not easily manipulated, that our response will be deliberate and measured rather than impulsive. This can be disarming for the other person and can shift the tone of the conversation in a more constructive direction. Practicing the pause takes time and effort. In the moment when emotions are running high, it can be incredibly difficult to resist the urge to react. But like any skill, it becomes easier with practice. We can start by pausing in smaller, less charged situations, taking a moment before responding to an irritating comment or a minor slight. Over time, this habit of pausing can become second nature, equipping us to handle more challenging situations with grace and composure. The power of the pause lies in its simplicity. It doesn't require elaborate techniques or extensive training. It's a matter of taking a moment, just a breath or two, to center ourselves before deciding how to proceed. And while it may seem like a small act, the ripple effects of this choice can be profound, transforming not only how we handle disrespect, but also how we navigate all the challenges of our relationships and interactions. Setting and maintaining personal boundaries is a cornerstone of emotional well-being. Boundaries define what is acceptable and unacceptable and how others treat us, and they protect our sense of self. Yet, when those boundaries are tested or disrespected, our natural instinct is often to defend them, to explain, justify, or prove why they matter. But there is a quieter, more powerful way to hold firm to our boundaries by guarding them without feeling the need to defend them. This approach is about standing confidently in your worth without engaging in unnecessary debates or explanations. To understand this concept, it's essential to first recognize what boundaries are and what they are not. Boundaries are not walls meant to shut others out. They are guidelines that protect your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. They are an expression of self-respect, not a demand for others to change. Boundaries are about what you will tolerate and how you will respond if those limits are crossed. Guarding them means upholding these limits with clarity and consistency, while not defending them means trusting in their validity without seeking external approval or validation. When someone disrespects or challenges your boundaries, the urge to defend them can be strong. This is often driven by fear of being misunderstood, judged, or rejected. We might feel the need to explain why our boundary exists, to justify why it is important, or to convince the other person to honor it. However, this defensive posture can unintentionally weaken our stance. It places the focus on gaining the other person's agreement rather than reinforcing our own sense of self-worth. Guarding your boundaries without defending them starts with a fundamental shift in mindset, understanding that your boundaries do not require external validation to be legitimate. Your feelings, needs, and limits are valid simply because they belong to you. You don't need to explain why you need time to yourself, why you won't tolerate disrespect, or why you prioritize certain values. By trusting in the importance of your boundaries, you eliminate the need to convince others of their worth. This approach also requires clarity. To guard your boundaries effectively, you must first be clear about what they are and why they matter to you. Vague or inconsistent boundaries can lead to confusion and make it harder to stand firm when they are tested. For example, if you decide that you will not respond to work emails after a certain hour, but occasionally make exceptions, it sends mixed signals to others, undermines your boundary. Clarity allows you to enforce your limits calmly and confidently, without the need for lengthy explanations. Guarding your boundaries without defending them also involves resisting the urge to engage in arguments or debates about your limits. When someone questions your boundary, they are often trying to shift the focus away from their behavior and onto you. For instance, if you decline an invitation because you need time for yourself, someone might accuse you of being selfish or overly sensitive. Defending your boundary in this situation by explaining your reasons or trying to justify your need for rest can give the other person an opening to challenge or dismiss your feelings. Instead, a simple and firm response, such as "I'm not available," communicates your boundary without inviting further discussion. This is not to say that you should never communicate about your boundaries. In fact, expressing your boundaries clearly and respectfully is an essential part of healthy relationships. The difference lies in how you communicate. Defending your boundaries often involves over-explaining or seeking approval, while guarding them is about stating them calmly and sticking to them consistently. For example, instead of saying, "I need time alone because I've had a really stressful week and I just can't deal with people right now," you can simply say, "I need some time alone today." The former seeks to justify your boundary, while the latter asserts it with confidence. Guarding your boundaries also means being prepared for pushback. Not everyone will respect your limits, and some people may try to guilt, manipulate, or pressure you into compromising them. This is especially true if you are setting boundaries in a relationship where none previously existed. It's important to remember that their reaction is not your responsibility. Your job is to uphold your boundaries, not to manage how others feel about them. When faced with resistance, respond with consistency and calmness. For example, if someone repeatedly interrupts your personal time despite being told it's a boundary, calmly restate your limit without engaging in arguments or justifications. One of the most empowering aspects of guarding your boundaries without defending them is the message it sends to others. It demonstrates self-respect and confidence, showing that you take your needs seriously. This not only reinforces your own sense of worth, but also encourages others to treat you with respect. People may not always agree with your boundaries, but they are more likely to honor them when they see that you are unwavering in your commitment to uphold them. This approach also allows you to protect your energy. Defending your boundaries can be emotionally draining, especially if you feel like you're constantly explaining yourself or trying to win others' approval. By simply asserting your limits without defending them, you conserve your energy for what truly matters, maintaining your peace and well-being. It's important to acknowledge that guarding your boundaries without defending them can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to seeking external validation or avoiding conflict. You may worry that people will think you're being difficult, selfish, or uncooperative. But over time, you'll find that the discomfort is outweighed by the empowerment that comes from standing firmly in your truth. Each time you uphold your boundaries without defending them, you reinforce your belief in your own worth and build greater resilience. This approach doesn't mean shutting down communication or ignoring others' feelings. Healthy relationships involve mutual respect and understanding, and there may be times when discussing your boundaries is necessary. However, this discussion should come from a place of clarity and confidence, not from a need to justify or prove your worth. By focusing on guarding your boundaries instead of defending them, you shift the dynamic from seeking approval to embodying self-respect. Boundaries are not about controlling others, they are about defining and protecting what is important to you. Guarding them without defending them is an act of self-care and self-empowerment. It allows you to honor your needs and values without getting caught up in unnecessary conflict or explanation. One of the most challenging aspects of human interaction is dealing with hurtful or disrespectful words from others. In these moments, it's natural to internalize their words, to question our own worth, and to wonder if there's truth in what has been said. But the reality is that what people say about us often says far more about them than it does about us. Choosing to let their words reflect them, not you, is an act of emotional resilience and self-respect. Words are powerful. They can uplift and inspire, or they can cut deeply. When someone speaks to you with disrespect, cruelty, or condescension, it's easy to absorb those words, replay them in your mind, and let them define how you see yourself. But words are also a reflection of the person who speaks them, their character, their emotions, and their intentions. Recognizing this truth can help you avoid internalizing negativity and instead approach it with clarity and perspective. The first step in letting others' words reflect them is understanding the source. People speak from their own experiences, beliefs, and struggles. Often, when someone directs harsh or unkind words towards you, it has little to do with you and everything to do with their own inner world. Perhaps they're dealing with insecurities, frustrations, or unresolved issues, and their words are a projection of those feelings. For example, someone who criticizes your accomplishments might be grappling with their own sense of inadequacy. Recognizing this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it does remind you that their words are not an accurate reflection of your value. It's also important to consider the intention behind their words. Some people speak carelessly, not realizing the impact of their words, while others intentionally use language to provoke or wound. In either case, their words reveal more about their emotional state or intentions than about who you are. A person who uses cutting remarks to hurt you is showing their inability to communicate constructively or their desire to assert control through negativity. By understanding this, you can see their words as a mirror of their own struggles rather than a judgment of your worth. One of the most empowering realizations is that you are not obligated to accept every word spoken to you. Imagine someone handing you a gift you don't want. You have the option to decline it. Similarly, you can choose not to accept the negativity someone directs at you. Their words don't automatically become true or meaningful simply because they've been spoken. You have the power to decide what you take in and what you let go of. Letting their words reflect them, not you, also means practicing emotional detachment. This doesn't mean ignoring your feelings or pretending you're unaffected. It's natural to feel hurt, angry, or disappointed when someone speaks to you in a hurtful way. However, detachment allows you to create a mental and emotional buffer between their words and your sense of self. Instead of immediately reacting or internalizing their remarks, you can take a step back and ask yourself, what does this say about them? Does this align with who I know myself to be? Building this sense of detachment requires self-awareness and self-compassion. When you know who you are, your values, strengths, and worth, it becomes easier to reject the narratives others try to impose on you. For instance, if someone accuses you of being lazy, but you know you're a hardworking and dedicated individual, their words lose their power. Your confidence in your own identity acts as a shield, protecting you from unfounded criticism. It's also important to recognize that not all words require a response. Silence can be a powerful way to let others' words reflect them without engaging in a fruitless exchange. When you refuse to react to negativity, you deny the other person the power to dictate your emotions or actions. Your lack of response sends a clear message: your words are about you, not me, and I won't let them disturb my peace. This doesn't mean avoiding important conversations or addressing conflicts when necessary, but it does mean choosing your battles wisely and refusing to be drawn into unnecessary drama. One of the challenges of letting others' words reflect them is overcoming the tendency to seek validation or approval. When someone speaks negatively about us, we may feel an urge to defend ourselves, to prove them wrong, or to win their approval. But seeking validation from someone who disrespects you only gives their words more weight than they deserve. Instead, focus on self-validation. Remind yourself of your strengths, achievements, and the positive feedback you've received from people who truly know and value you. This approach also applies to situations where the person's words are intended to manipulate or control you. For example, if someone uses guilt or shame to influence your decisions, their words reveal their need to control rather than your failure to meet their expectations. Recognizing this dynamic allows you to set boundaries and protect your autonomy. Letting their words reflect them, not you, is not about dismissing all feedback or criticism. Constructive feedback, even when uncomfortable, can help us grow and improve. The key is discerning between criticism that is meant to help and words that are meant to harm. Constructive feedback comes from a place of care and respect, while harmful words are often rooted in the other person's issues. Learning to distinguish between the two helps you take in what's valuable and leave the rest behind. Ultimately, this practice is about reclaiming your power. When you allow others' words to dictate your emotions or self-perception, you give them control over your well-being. By choosing to see their words as a reflection of them, you take back that control. You affirm your right to define your own worth, independent of anyone else's opinions or judgments. This mindset doesn't mean you won't feel the sting of hurtful words, but it does mean you'll recover more quickly. You'll learn to process the emotions they evoke without letting them linger or take root. Over time, you'll find that their words lose their power to shake your confidence or disturb your peace. This resilience allows you to navigate relationships and interactions with greater clarity, compassion, and strength. There is a fine art to knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. In moments of tension, conflict, or personal challenge, the temptation to speak can often stem from our ego, a desire to prove ourselves, defend our pride, or assert our superiority. However, there is a deeper and more meaningful way to engage with our words speaking when it serves our growth, not our ego. This intentional approach to communication prioritizes self-improvement, understanding, and authenticity over self-validation or dominance. The ego, by its nature, craves attention and validation. It thrives on being right, being heard, and being acknowledged. When someone challenges or criticizes us, our ego reacts defensively, urging us to speak up to protect our image or prove a point. While this instinct is natural, it often leads to reactive communication that escalates conflict, strains relationships, and leaves us feeling unfulfilled. Growth, on the other hand, invites us to speak with purpose and intention, aligning our words with our values and long-term goals rather than fleeting emotional impulses. Speaking when it serves your growth requires a pause, a moment of reflection before responding. This pause creates space to ask important questions. Why do I feel the need to speak right now? What do I hope to achieve by saying this? Will my words contribute to a solution, deepen understanding, or strengthen a relationship? Or are they simply a reaction to my bruised ego? By taking the time to assess our motivations, we can choose words that reflect our higher selves rather than our insecurities. One way to distinguish between ego-driven and growth-oriented speaking is to consider the tone and intent behind your words. Ego-driven speaking often seeks to dominate, win, or control. It may manifest as sarcasm, defensiveness, or a need to have the last word. For example, during an argument, the ego might push you to point out the other person's flaws or bring up unrelated grievances to win the exchange. While this might feel satisfying in the moment, it rarely resolves the underlying issue or fosters mutual respect. In contrast, growth-oriented speaking focuses on clarity, connection, and resolution. It seeks to express your thoughts and feelings in a way that aligns with your values and fosters understanding. For instance, instead of retaliating with anger when someone criticizes you, speaking from a place of growth might involve calmly expressing how their words affected you and seeking to understand their perspective. This approach not only diffuses tension, but also strengthens your emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills. Speaking when it serves your growth also involves knowing when not to speak. Silence, when used intentionally, can be a powerful tool for self-preservation and reflection. Not every comment requires a response, and not every conflict needs to be addressed immediately. By choosing silence in moments of heightened emotion, you give yourself the opportunity to process your feelings, gain perspective, and respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This doesn't mean suppressing your voice or avoiding important conversations. It means speaking when you are ready to contribute meaningfully rather than reacting out of ego-driven urgency. Another key aspect of growth-oriented speaking is a willingness to embrace vulnerability. The ego often resists vulnerability because it fears judgment or rejection. It pushes us to project an image of strength, confidence, and perfection, even when that image is not authentic. Growth, however, requires honesty and openness. Speaking from a place of growth means acknowledging your fears, mistakes, and uncertainties. It means saying, I don't know, I need help, or I'm sorry, even when it feels uncomfortable. This kind of honesty fosters deeper connections and allows for personal and relational healing. Listening is also an essential component of growth-oriented speaking. True growth comes not only from expressing ourselves, but also from understanding others. The ego often prioritizes speaking over listening, focusing on crafting a response rather than truly hearing the other person. Growth invites us to approach conversations with curiosity and humility, seeking to understand before being understood. By actively listening, we create space for meaningful dialogue and build the foundation for mutual respect and understanding. Growth-oriented speaking also involves a commitment to aligning your words with your actions. The ego might tempt you to say things to impress others or to appear a certain way, even if those words don't reflect your true beliefs or intentions. Growth challenges you to speak with integrity, ensuring that your words are consistent with your values and behaviors. For example, if you value kindness, speaking from a place of growth means choosing words that reflect compassion even in moments of frustration or disagreement. Additionally, speaking when it serves your growth means recognizing the impact of your words on others. The ego often focuses solely on self-expression, disregarding how words may be received. Growth-oriented speaking involves empathy, considering how your words might affect the other person and choosing language that fosters understanding rather than division. This doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations or sugarcoating the truth, but it does mean delivering your message with respect and care. It's important to acknowledge that speaking from a place of growth is not always easy. It requires self-awareness, emotional regulation, and a commitment to personal development. There will be moments when the ego's pull feels almost irresistible, when the urge to defend yourself, prove a point, or assert your dominance is strong. In these moments, it can be helpful to remind yourself of the bigger picture. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of relationships do you want to cultivate? How will your words contribute to or detract from these goals? Over time, prioritizing growth over ego in your communication can transform not only how you interact with others, but also how you see yourself. You'll begin to notice a sense of peace and fulfillment that comes from speaking with intention and integrity. Instead of feeling drained or regretful after conversations, you'll feel empowered and aligned with your true self. This shift from ego-driven to growth-oriented speaking is a journey, not a destination. It's a practice that requires patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to learn from your mistakes. There will be times when you speak impulsively or let your ego take the lead, and that's okay. Each misstep is an opportunity to reflect, recalibrate, and recommit to speaking in a way that serves your growth. In the end, the way we choose to communicate has the power to shape our relationships, influence our growth, and reflect the essence of who we are. By learning to pause, reflect, and speak with intention, we create space for meaningful connections and personal transformation. Choosing to let silence speak when necessary, guarding our boundaries with quiet confidence, and ensuring our words are rooted in growth rather than ego allows us to navigate life's challenges with grace and authenticity. Ultimately, it is not about winning arguments or proving our worth, but about fostering understanding, preserving our peace, and honoring our values in every conversation.